Welcome. So my name is Stephanie Allen, and I have been a massage therapist and acupuncturist, yoga instructor for close to 30 years now, give or take. And I would have to say one of the most consistent things that I experience with my clients when they have any kind of pain or difficulty or challenge in their life is often because we have basically neglected ourselves, or we have not really knowing our true potential, to know who we are or why we're here. And I always say there's a gift in pain, because pain really does make us present. It makes us slow down, it makes us stop, and it makes us go inside in our hearts. But often, most of us have no idea how to do that. And so we need someone to be able to stand with us, to be able to gather those gifts and strengths and the potentials and the questions that are in our heart that we want solved. So this is how this has grown, from the grow, flow, and glow, creating the life you want to live and lead. And that's me, of course, on the bottom. And I am so interested about human potential, because through this doorway of being a therapist and working with clients, I always find that it's the doorway. I mentioned before in our Mindset Mastery, and if you haven't had a chance to look at that, that is posted, and feel free to go back and have a look at it on the Cumberland County Municipality website, as well as on the Facebook, as well as on my own personal site. It's also there too. But we talked about the two doorways, pain or passion, and most of us choose the pain doorway. So today, we're going to talk about the passion doorway and how that can be a completely different journey than the doorway of pain. So when I look at this is the three areas that we're going to look at today: the growing, the flowing, and the glowing. So when we talk about growth, growth happens by chance or by choice. And I have this little square on the left-hand side there. When you look at that, the different colors. This is what's called the Ikigai. It's a Japanese way of finding your flow or finding your true potential. And it looks at each one of these circles, looking at, what do you love, the very top circle, and then the one to the right, what the world needs. So the service industry and the calling that's in your heart, and what you can be paid for, which is often what we're trained in through school. Say, okay, let's get a job, let's have a career. What can I be paid for to be able to sustain my life? And also, what are you good at? Now, many of us tend to lean to one or two of those circles, but we don't integrate the wholeness of it. And I believe that in this time in our lives, this is where we're being asked to really come into union with all of those aspects. And for a long, long time, our story about our lives are just about getting a job, just about survival, and really not having a whole lot of space or time to really explore who we are and why we're here. And that is both the problem, but it's also both the solution, so that when we start to look into that, we can find a way to really lift ourselves up. So I have the picture of the team up there, of these group of individuals looking at a computer screen, because I look at that as our way of glowing. But when we're in the right place with the right people in the right time, we feel safe, we feel nourished. But we often forget about the inner team inside our heart. So we're going to explore with that a little bit today too. And then on the bottom right-hand side, I have a picture of the water, the stream, the flow. And often we can feel in our lives that we're kind of paddling upstream, and it's difficult and it's challenging. So we're going to explore with that a little bit of flow, what that is, and how we can jump into it, how we can really ride it. So here's our three steps. Grow your dream, find your flow, and glow with potential. Now, if you were listening to me over the last little while, I've been speaking a lot about the caterpillar, and I really am so drawn to it. And of course, it's springtime, so I'm even more drawn to it. When we are in the situation that we are right now in our lives, and this is, happens a lot. We go through these times in our lives where we just are told we have to stop, we have to go inside, we have to be still. It is also the season of winter where we're going in and we're hibernating in that level. But there's always a reason, and we really, really, as a humanity, resist stopping, slowing down, going inside. Sometimes people will say to me, a lot of times with my clients, it feels like it's a prison rather than a sanctuary. So I invite you to have an open perspective today of looking at it a little bit differently. Instead of seeing it as a prison, as to look at it as an opportunity, as a sanctuary, a way to really connect. And we can take the time and really grow ourselves. So, yeah, this is the stages of a caterpillar. And when you think of a butterfly and a caterpillar are so radically different. You see the softness and on the earth, the ground, all the little legs as a caterpillar, and the freedom and the expansiveness of a butterfly. But that in-between stage where they're in the larvae, when you're in the chrysalis, is not comfortable. In fact, it's miserable. It's tight, it's restricting. You don't know what's going to happen, a lot of uncertainty. And we can see those patterns in our lives where we've gone through that ourselves, where there's been uncertainty. And I feel like this is a time, again, of rebirthing, to really rebirth ourselves into a new way, that we are moving from the stage of caterpillars to butterflies. What we are needing help with, though, is those skills of how do we do that when it's so uncertain, when we're so unknown? How do we then make that transition? And that's what we're going to explore today. So the best first step in the way of growing is looking towards the future. Now I have it on the top there, future, present, past. We tend to talk about past, present, future. We think that our past is behind us, we're in the present moment, and we're looking towards the future. And often we'll think, well, I am the way I am because of what happened in my past. And that is, of course, very true, but it doesn't have to be. And that's what I'm opening to the possibility and the suggestion is that what if our future is actually giving to us and calling to us and is far stronger than our past? So let me give you an example of this. I have a picture of a woman sitting on a rock looking out to the ocean, and she's watching a wave. And I say, waves don't come from our past, they actually come from our future. So imagine, if you will, and this is a good opportunity to close your eyes, and we'll do a little meditation here. And if you haven't done meditation, it's really about dropping in and going to that place inside, to the unknown, and allowing yourself to just be. So close your eyes, place your feet on the floor, get comfortable, and take a nice long inhale and nice long exhale. Just let yourself settle into your body. I want you to imagine that you are sitting on a beach. It could be any beach that you are familiar with, or maybe it's a beach that you've never been to before. But you are safely sitting on the beach. Perhaps you're on a rock, or maybe you're down by the water. Maybe you're up high on the cliff, looking at the shore, but you're at a beach. And you're listening to the waves. You're just listening to the water coming into the shore. And the water comes in and the water goes out. We're going to match our breath with these waves right now. So as you inhale, draw in the ocean. And as you exhale, allow the water to retract. Long, slow, deep breaths in and out. You have complete safety here. And as you look out into the ocean, you're watching the waves. You're seeing the waves coming in. And what's magnificent about the waves is they come in patterns. You might notice, or They'll have sets of three usually, waves coming in, building, and then there's silence or very stillness. And then the waves build up again, one wave, then another, and then there's stillness. And your breath is matching with these waves. It's just breathing slow and deep, nice and long. And as you are breathing with the waves, you look out even further into the horizon and you see someone on the wave. Maybe they're surfing the wave, or maybe they're on a boat, like a sailboat or a rowboat, but they're out on the horizon and they're riding this wave. They're playing on this wave. And you're breathing with them, you're feeling them, and you're feeling connected to them. There's something familiar about this person. And you notice as you're breathing and you're connecting that this person on the wave is starting to come closer and closer into shore. Every breath brings them closer. And there's a warmthness to this person. There's a sense of peace, relaxation that they're bringing, a sense of reassurance. And eventually they start to come right up onto the shore. And you feel so connected. They're so familiar to you. They begin to walk towards you. And as they get closer and closer, their face of familiarity brings a smile to you. This is your future self, the one who knows how to ride those waves, the one who is happy, fulfilled, and peaceful. And you're so excited to see each other. You invite your future self to sit beside you. You have so many questions you want to ask them. And your future self is so delighted to be here with you now. And as you sit comfortably next to each other, perhaps you have a question that you'd like answered. You know that this future self has such wisdom, such love, such joy. What is it that you would like to ask them? And just breathe that question to them. Now, your future self may not answer you in words right away. They might just smile. They might point to something. Or maybe you feel something. Listen with your whole heart. And take the next minute to be with this future self, exploring and uniting. And as your time with each other draws towards its end, for this time, your future self, with its delightful smile and reassurance, who's so happy to see you, that you've called them into being, finds their board or their yacht or their sailboat, whatever they're on, and they put it back into the water. And they head back out into the ocean, waving to you, reminding you that anytime you need reassurance in the waves of your life, to call upon your future self, that this being can come and help you ride the waves and enjoy the stillness. And you begin to breathe back into the awareness that you are sitting firmly on the ground. You feel the support underneath you. And you wiggle your fingers, and you wiggle your toes. You slowly begin to wake up and open your eyes. You can just take a little stretch there. Just noticing what you notice. Maybe take out a pen and a paper, your writing instrument, and just maybe jot down a couple things that your future self is reassuring you. Perhaps the question even that you asked in your heart. And then you can come back to this later if you need to on the recording. But when we look at our future, it's not meant to be certain. It takes effort and energy to choose the future. And we've often talked about destiny or fate and what's the difference between them. Destiny has to be chosen, even though the acorn knows in its entelechy, in its blueprint, it's meant to be an oak tree. It still needs to choose to live into it. That is our free will. So what fate happens is what happens when we're not paying attention or when we're not choosing. And that's often when life is happening around us and we get informed by it. And I'll talk a little bit more about this as we move through this with another experience. So I have a question in here too that says, what would your future self request from to stop doing and to start doing? So here's something to think of. You come back to that caterpillar to the butterfly. If you were to choose your destiny, if you were to choose to live into the full potential, and like I said, you don't need to know what that is or figure that out. There's often something we need to stop doing, and that's not so much in the outer world, although sometimes that is required, but it's often more with ourselves. It's often an internal world. We need to stop being hard on ourselves. We need to stop gossiping about ourselves with negativity or doubts and fears. Those things hijack our brain and hijack our energy and our emotion. So often there's something we need to stop doing, a habit, a belief, a pattern. And then that makes space or awareness for us to start doing something. So it's very easy to say, hey, this is what I don't want in my life anymore. I don't want to struggle. I don't like this kind of work, or I don't like these kind of people. It's very easy to say what I don't like often, and turning those don't likes into do likes, meaning don't likes are the doorways to say, okay, if I don't like that kind of work or that kind of relationship, what would I want instead? And to take it the opposite direction. These are the ways of the future, and this is how resistance can help us open up. So the next thing that we need to look at is once we start to ask the question, we go on the journey, is flow. What is flow? And I have again the picture of the water, because water flows no matter what. It knows absolutely no obstacle. And if there was an obstacle, it either goes around it or finds another route, or it wears it down. Like it just flows. Nothing can hold back water. Maybe temporarily, but over time, that water will wear it down. And water is how we move. It's actually our essence. When we think of growth and development, we talk about growing, is that growing is, we're always moving. So we're either growing and evolving, becoming better, or we're growing in the opposite direction and we're de-evolving and decomposing. We're actually going to the opposite way. So again, we need to choose. I want to grow, but we also want to grow in the direction that also lights our heart up, that is aligned with our gifts and our strengths and our passions. So this is a key to the flowing. So I'm going to show you a little video here because this has been a very, very huge part of me. And I'm going to give you a little bit of background of why this is so important to me and how it's helped me in my life. Most of my life, when I think back of why I even got onto this path, most of my life, I was very much concerned about other people. Meaning I wanted to make a difference in other people's lives. I wanted to make them happy and very much a people pleaser. And I did that really, what I would say, well. However, I neglected myself in the process, meaning I didn't take time to know who I was, what I wanted, what my gifts and strengths were. I allowed other people to tell me what those things were. And I adopted other people's opinions of me. And I made those other people's opinions more important than discovering my own. And this is a danger. I would say this is a danger part of ourselves, because when we do that, it's like we're burying ourselves alive. We feel heavy, we feel burdened, and we are so externally addicted, really, externally addicted to our value and our worth. So when the weather isn't so great, we feel crappy. When someone doesn't like who we are, we feel sad. When we don't make the money or get the job or get the accolades or the value, then we degrade ourselves. Now, I'm not saying that we shouldn't feel those things. Of course we do. We're human beings and we have hearts. But when we've given all of our value and all of our attention to that, it doesn't lend any space for us for healing and help. So when I was searching in my younger years, I found that in the people pleasing and in the sourcing of my value, my worth, and my happiness, putting it outside of me, it left me with a great deal of pain and a great deal of anger. And when I say pain, it was actual physical pain. I could not move my neck for about 2 years, and I had a chronic migraine. I was always sick. And I was active physically, but I wasn't really taking care of my heart. I wasn't really taking care of my emotions. And I definitely wasn't taking care of my mind or my soul. And I didn't even know how to do that. So when I discovered this profiling, and this isn't like Myers-Briggs, and some of you might have heard that, or the DISC model, or different things where we talk about personality tests. This isn't a personality test. This is an assessment to find out where your natural tendency is to help you get into flow, like getting into that water. So growing up, I was pretty much the jack of all trades, master of none. And still to this day, working with that, honing that away and learning how to really delve into knowing my flow and living in that place. So Genius U came along, and the founder of Genius U has a beautiful vision that he believes that when people really find their gifts and strengths and they lend their talents and their energy and awareness to it, then it creates possibility for all people to find that. And that when we do that, we will start to realize that we are so divinely connected and we need each other in a healthy way, in an interdependent way, rather than a codependent way. So there is a free assessment that I have on here that I will lead you in the chat and also in the website underneath. But this is a little information, and I'm going to play this one for you. So I'm going to stop my share for a minute. And if you have volume on your computer, you might need to adjust it. I'm going to try to do this up. Pull this up here. And this is a little video. It's about 2 minutes.
Yes, and him, and her, and, well, all of them. Einstein said it.
Let's start that over.
According to Einstein, you are a genius. And him, and her, and, well, all of them. Einstein said everyone is a genius, but if you judge a fish by its ability to climb a tree, it'll go through its whole life believing that it's stupid. We're all born great at something, but as we grow up, we find out all the things we're not so good at. So we spend our life feeling bad about those things, working on our weaknesses, while we take our strengths for granted. But wait, how about him, and her, and them? They focused on the one thing they were great at. They went from ordinary to extraordinary. And you can too. Did you know there are 4 types of genius? And you're one of them. There's dynamo genius, who loves to create, blaze genius, who loves to connect, tempo genius, who loves to serve, and steel genius, who loves the details. Each has a different energy that links to 4 seasons and 4 elements. Great minds from Confucius and Plato to Isaac Newton and Carl Jung studied these 4 types. Each has a different natural path, different passions, different strengths and weaknesses. Your winning formula is someone else's losing formula. You have a natural way to learn, to lead, to live, to love, a natural strategy that suits you in relationships, in your work, in social media, even in the design of your day. In fact, if you do anything that feels like hard work, you're already doing the wrong thing. When you know your genius, you can get in your flow. And when you know the genius of your friends, your workmates, your boss, children, family, you can appreciate them for what they are best at, and that brings out the best in them. As for the things you're not so great at, well, there's a genius in your network waiting to do those things for you. Pass the time, double the happiness. So take the genius test, discover your genius, then find the genius of your friends and grow your social genius. It will help you to live the life you love, and love the life you live. The genius test is free, and it will set you free.
So I love that everybody is a genius. Every single being on this planet is a genius. But when we don't discover what our genius is, then we think we are less than, our self-esteem, our self-worth goes down. And then we end up doing the things that are hard work. So I don't know about you, but I'll tell you, growing up in school, I was really good at talking. I was really good at being social. I was really good at disturbing everybody. I got a lot of good things. There was a lot of things that I wasn't so great at. Sitting still, paying attention, being focused. Those were really, really challenging for me. And I made myself wrong for them. And so self-esteem, self-worth, all of those things go down. And I can see this even in the children that I work with in my own practice, is that sometimes we, as parents, as caregivers, as teachers, as the roles that we play, we want them to succeed. We want them to be their best. And we might say, oh, little Sally's really great at reading and acting, but not so great at math. So we're going to get her a tutor, and we're going to help her study math, and we're going to work hard at it, and we're going to take away her playtime out in the playground or with other children or away from her books, and we're going to help her focus on that math so that at the end of her school life, she's going to be really good at math. But and I know that doesn't always help. In fact, it can sometimes feel really, really hard. And instead, this is a paradigm shift because we're really needing this in our lives right now, in our works, in our relationship, in the way that we learn, the way we lead, is that to focus on the very thing that brings you joy, to focus on the very thing that you are absolutely in love with and are natural at. Because this is going to help to put you into flow. And why it's also important is that, and it is important to also know what we're weak at too, but when looking at our weaknesses, then we allow other people to come into our lives to help each other, because where one person is weak, another person is strong. And when we come in together, we actually create this collaboration. So we've been in a whole toxic relationship with consumerism, trying to consume and trying to be everything to everyone and consume, 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 like the caterpillar, right? We are consumers, we consume. And we've gotten so overly consuming that we've ended up being in this little kind of chrysalis that's tight. We're ready to emerge as butterflies. And as you know, every single butterfly is so delicate and so beautiful. We're genius. It's so magnificently complex. And yet, so are we. So when we can really discover that, and this is what is so helpful, that when I started to learn this, my whole life shifted. So it's the things that you start to say no to, not because you're not good enough, not because it's that it's making space that you can really build skill and passion and joy towards what you're good at, and to allow other people to come in to make up that harmony. So share my screen here again. So I highly recommend it. Like I said, it's a free assessment, and each one of those geniuses has a different way. If you're in a relationship, if you're in a marriage, let me tell you, it's so helpful when you understand your partner or your child or your parent or the people you're working with or anything that you're in relationship with, and you go, oh, they're coming from that perspective, then you can get each other into harmony. So highly recommended. I do a lot more with that. This is a very good taste test. So what is flow then? So flow is your path of least resistance. It's the current. So if you feel like you're swimming upstream, you're definitely not in flow, and you're probably not using your gifts and strengths. And the world needs each other's gifts and strengths. It is so needed. So how do we find it? How do we find it? So we're going to take out that piece of paper again, and just for a moment, I want you to think about the things that you love. We're going to start first. Let's do that. We're going to think of the things that are your passions. What are you most passionate about? That you have no problem, looking and researching and getting your hands in it and being outside your comfort zone. What are you passionate about? What do you love? Just make a list. And then make a list of all your skills. What have you been trained at? Like sometimes, we have come through school and we've gotten really good training. However, it may not be our natural tendencies. We've had to kind of work at it really hard. So, what are you skilled at? What are your skills? Are you a people person, or are you more detail oriented, more around organizing and research? Are you someone that's big adventurous in the way of seeing big possibilities, always thinking of new ideas? Or are you someone who's really grounded, who's really much an empathetic or has a lot of connectedness to feeling and really understanding people and taking them through the next step? What are your gifts and strengths? Now, as I say this, sometimes people will look at me and go, I have no idea. And like I said, I was there totally. And often we don't recognize what our gifts and strengths. So here's a little suggestion. When you complete this session today, either pick up the phone or whoever might be in your environment, ask them what they think your gifts and strengths are, what they think your talents are. It's a great way to start, because sometimes they actually do see these things better than we see ourselves. And then return the favor to them, because often what we find is that we tend to neglect what we're most talented at and beautiful and extraordinary at. We just take that for granted. What's easy for us to do, though, is I bet you if I said, make a list of all your weaknesses, where things are really hard for you, that you struggle with in your day. whether, like I said, whether it's relationship, whether it's about being organized or being on time or looking after things or paying, whatever it is, what are your weaknesses that you're weak at? And take those weaknesses, and instead of beating yourself up, instead of saying, oh, I suck at this, I'm terrible at that, oh, what am I this? I want you to take those weaknesses and say, okay, if I have those weaknesses, because it's important to know what your weaknesses are, but we want to say, I don't want to put more time and energy into them unless they're aligned with my passion and my vision for where I want to be in my future. So for example, you want to be a medical doctor, you're probably going to have to take organic chem. It may not be your gift and strength, but your gift is about really being with people and helping solve it, or you're a surgeon, you're really great at understanding how the body works and you really want to be in service. And you got to get through this. So sometimes we have to get through that aspect, and it makes it a different doorway. Like I said, I wish I had been known as a child. It's like, why do I have to learn this subject? But if they related it to my passion or my future, then it would make the doorway much easier to go through than not really understanding, like, how is this relevant to my life? So play with this, and this is the Ikigai. So feel free to take this picture and really play with it, looking at what you love, what the world needs, what you can be paid for, and what you're good at. All of these in harmony are what's going to give you your full potential, your full life. So this is something that I work a lot with in my practice with people, are anxiety and excitement. And I put both of them in there in the same because what's interesting is that anxiety and excitement have a very similar response. And because we don't know one from the other, we tend to confuse them. So I'm going to hope to give you a little bit of clarity about what this is. And I'm going to start with an example first, though. Years ago, I had a young woman in my office that was working through her anxiety issues, so to speak. And I asked her, I said, so what is it that you love? What are you skilled at? What are you passionate? She goes, oh, I love to dance. I love to be on stage. I love to take the mic and sing. I just love it. She said, but I'm also so anxious about it. I get sick to my stomach before any time I have to go out on stage or do any kind of a performance. It just makes me crazy, and I can't do it. And I need help because I really want to live that in my life. That's my dream, but I can't get through this anxiety. And I said, okay, so we're going to talk about comfort zone here with her. So I said, do you feel outside of your comfort zone? That comfort zone is that little cocoon that we get stuck in, and we go, okay, I'm in my cocoon. If I step outside of that cocoon, it feels threatening to me because I haven't been outside of it before. It's uncertain. So you have to ask yourself inside, am I moving towards something more beautiful, something greater? Is this in line with my gifts and my strengths? Or is this in line with my weaknesses? So Mikhail Csikszentmihalyi, quite the name, isn't it? He's a researcher, and he looked at the flow state. Now, this is what's interesting about anxiety. And if you look at the chart here, when you're in your flow state, there's your river. You're in your gifts, your strengths, your passions, your future vision. That river is going to take you to the ocean. It is going to lead you. In fact, if it's a really great flowing river, which is about you getting into flow, you can just pick up your feet and it'll actually take you there. You don't have to work very hard. What happens, though, is that when we get outside of our comfort zone, on one direction, if we go into the doubts or the anxieties, we're going to go into anxiety. If we go into nostalgia, which is our past, if it's too familiar and it's kind of the same old, we actually get boredom. Real flow, though, is excitement. So going back to that last one, anxiety is when we're outside of our comfort zone, either, too much with fears and doubts and worries, or too much of the same old, the consistent past. We're not going to grow. It's not going to be growing, and we're not going to be in the stream of our consciousness or our awareness or our love. And we're going to have to struggle. Versus totally dropping in and going, hey, wait a minute, like I said to this young woman, I said, do you love dancing? Yeah. Do you love performing? Yeah. Do you love like singing and doing all that? And do you love building your skills and strengths toward it? Absolutely. I said, well, maybe you're not anxious. Maybe it's excitement. And her eyes lit up, literally. She lit up like a Christmas tree. And it changed. That moment of just having that conversation completely rewired her thought process in her brain to go, oh my gosh, I've been telling myself that when I'm happy and excited and in the growth zone towards my gifts and strengths and passions, that I'm anxious. And I need to stop doing that. I need to tell myself I'm excited. And it completely changed her whole body. And it does. It completely changes our whole chemical release that happens in our physical body. So that's something to really question yourself with right now. It's like, if you're bored, which by the way is the opposite of happiness, when people say, oh, what's the opposite of happiness? They tend to think sadness. It's actually boredom. So if you're feeling bored or anxious, then ask yourself, what are my gifts? What are my strengths? What is the vision I want to move towards? And am I working towards that? Because if you are, and you can really be honest with yourself with that, then you need to tell yourself that you are in the excitement zone and that it's letting go of anxiety. Like, anxiety is a real thing, it really is. But sometimes it gets very mislabeled. So, food for thought on that one. So this is also how we glow, by the way, is when we get into that flow zone, it moves us. And I have another little experience. I say, our thoughts really do create our reality. And it happens on the inside first. So when you drop in and you just, again, let's close our eyes and allow yourself to breathe. And I want you to imagine a lemon, a really ripe, juicy lemon, and you feel it and you bring it up to your hands and you're just feeling that nice juicy lemon and you cut it open and you bite into it. Automatically, most people have a response. They either wince or they'll actually have a physical response in their mouth. Their saliva glands actually will release. So why does this happen? Even though I told you to think about a lemon, you didn't have to, but your sensory awareness tuned into some sort of old programming of knowing what lemons are like, and it accessed that potential. Now, I say this is important because our mind is very, very powerful. And if I make the relationship again back to the acorn that has a blueprint to know it's meant to be a mighty oak, or the caterpillar that also has a blueprint that's meant to be a beautiful, free butterfly, we all have that blueprint of also becoming extraordinary geniuses and living our full potential. So when we allow our mind to then nourish those thoughts and we start to drop into our gifts and strengths and our flow state, we literally start to move towards that direction. And everything in the outer world begins to show up to help us, which is the next part, our environments. Our environment is so important. When I was speaking of going and trying to find myself, I actually took my environment away from here. I left and went out west, went down the states, looking for something better, looking for better weather, looking for better people, more opportunities, more money, more, consumer, consumer, consumer. When really what I needed to do was look into the internal environment and say, okay, wait a minute, who's talking inside my heart? Who is playing inside of my heart and soul? And that's why I say the inner team. When we feel we don't have support in our lives, we tend to be looking outside instead of inside because we have infinite amount of support inside. We just often don't know how to access it. So I say inside first. It always creates the outer, and we need to start to look inside and finding a way to do that so that we can connect. Sometimes you've even heard this. This is a business term. It's like, we are the sum total of the 5 people we hang out with. And if any of you have had children, you know that your child is going to very much display a different personality when they hang out with different children. Well, this is true with us. as well. And we say it's true with us in the outer world, but ultimately it's true inside. So I always say, great book, by the way, Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill. He wrote this back in the 1930s during the Great Depression, and he talked to 500 of the wealthiest people and really wanted to understand their mindset. And one of the things that he did was that he created a mastermind group inside himself. So he recruited all of the great creators and leaders and lovers and parents and all these parts inside himself to create that internal support so that he could recruit what he needed inside to be able to move through the outer world. So, and science will tell us this as well. 97% of what we manifest or create in our outer lives comes from our attitude, beliefs, and mindset, when only 3% comes from what we do. And boy, do we ever like to be human doers instead of practicing being a human being. So this is the call. I always say, if you can just take one thing away from this, for yourself, is to really look at cultivating your gifts and strengths and building that inner team inside your heart. So I say busting the inner team. So, we often have light and shadow, always are there, day and night, good, bad, the polarities. And the polarities help us really understand that tension of the opposite. You think of a violin, you're not going to play a violin with loose strings. It has to have taut strings, but not so taut that they break. To play our music of our heart, we also have to have that tautness of that team inside. So we have a critical self on one side and we have a loving self on the other that pulls that tautness. And we have the choice to constantly tune in to one or the other. And we can look at and say, which one is speaking to me now? Is this the critical self or is this a loving parent or a loving self? Is this my inner child or is this the loving parent or adult? So returning back to that awareness of anxiety again, often it's the child in us that is feeling scared, lost, abandoned, and uncertain. And we're asking this inner child, which I'm sure you would never do, to ask your child to go to work and pay bills and be married and look after, everybody in the family as well as yourself. It's too much of a burden for a child. It's scary. That child is meant to play. Yet the loving parent or the loving adult totally can do that. So who are you sourcing inside yourself? It's a great opportunity where we have had this time to slow down, to connect, to breathe, and really inquiry. Do a little inquiry to say, who's at my boardroom table here or at my kitchen table? Who's playing inside? And to allow that part to really nourish it. So I say this is how we glow, and we glow with potential. One of my teachers from The Way of the Heart, Daniel Goodenough, this is his version of really glowing and living to our full potential. And he says it's doing what you love to do in the way you love to do it, with the people you love most, in the way that the world most needs it done. That is the outcome, which will be happiness and fulfillment. And we all help each other become our best selves. We need each other. So just to recap again, these 3 areas: to grow, to do the inner inquiry, to really look at what are my gifts, my strengths, my passions. What is it that I'm good at? What is it that I love? What is it that the world needs? How am I being called? Who's my team? What's inside there? Who have I got inside to help cheer me on? And can I connect with that more? And to allow myself to completely flow, give myself permission to be in the river of my gifts and strengths. And I know that river has a destination, and that river has a destination somewhere beautiful. So that 3-step process: grow your dream, find your flow, and glow. Your glow zone is your flow zone. It's almost like a tongue twister. So know yourself, find your flow. There's that assessment. It's a free assessment. If you want to go on, you can go through my website. It'll ask you to sign up. It's not for an email thing. It's not mine. It just allows you to create a platform for you to go in, and there's a whole little micro degree that you can explore. That's where the videos are on how you learn, how you love, how you lead, and how you live according to your assessment, and how the best way is. You can cultivate that inner environment. And I always say, get a coach, get somebody who can hold you accountable. They say if you haven't got somebody to hold you accountable, you're more than likely going to go back to the old ways that you've always. That's what we do. We default to the old ways. So have a buddy, have a friend, have a coach, have a mentor, someone that can really keep you in a loving place to move in that river towards the ocean of remembering who you are and why you're here. So there we have it. Grow, flow, and glow, creating the life you want to live and lead.